Howdy, and welcome to Early Reflections, the podcast where young folks talk about making it in the sonic arts. I'm your host, Adam Daniel Jones, and my guest today, all the way from Reading, Pennsylvania, is my friend Elliot Rhoads. Elliot, how you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you. It's so nice to catch up with you, see your face. It's been a minute.
I know it's literally, oh my gosh, literally March happened and then it was just like nobody, literally nobody.
Oh God, yeah, it's exactly, and
we're over it, right? It's 2021.
yeah,
Woo!
exactly. Yeah, it's totally new year. Nothing bad can go wrong
Yeah,
now.
actually, New Year, same old stuff.
Oh God, yeah, exactly. So before we get into it, Elliot, what are some
Yeah.
pronouns that I can refer to you?
Pronouns, I use he/him pronouns.
Great, sounds good. Me as well. For just for your reference, I don't think I've really
Awesome.
talked about that as much as I need to. Is that I feel like it's just a good thing for like particularly people that are pretty passing as cis in particular, like
Absolutely.
just normalizing bringing your pronouns up is like a really important thing I think that people need to be doing now.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, we know so many people that have gone through their own journeys with understanding gender identity and whatnot. And I have to
Yeah,
remind myself that, like, not everybody knows everybody's pronouns, and making assumptions is, it's very easy to do, but it's not always the right thing to do.
yeah,
So it's always good to ask. And it's honestly like, it's a base question. It's not invasive. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, all you have to say is, hey, like, what pronouns do you prefer? Or what
yeah.
pronouns do you use? Like, it's not like, what are you? Who are you? Like, and that's such a big thing for me because especially like how I present. I mean, obviously I'm in a little bit of geesh today, but like I go by he/him pronouns currently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That makes me feel comfortable. So I like that you asked that question.
Yeah, and then like also like for me, as somebody who is cis and is straight, and just realizing the fact that it's a spectrum and it comes in different points in your life. Like sometimes people will be, I know plenty of people who have been straight for their whole life, but then are like, hey, you know what? I think I'm a lesbian now. It's such a spectrum, and that I think has been really
Absolutely.
great lately about like the time that we're living in, regardless of how shitty it has been with the last administration. I feel like socially we've had a lot of, breakthroughs.
Absolutely. I didn't
Yeah.
know, and that's the thing. I didn't know if we could curse on this podcast, but
Oh, we can.
good to know that we can say shit. All right, good.
Fuck yeah, we can.
You never know. Fuck yeah. But no,
Excellent.
I totally agree. I mean, gosh, like this past administration has taught us a lot of things about each other, but I totally agree. Like, I think we're moving in the right direction with understanding just each other. So, or
Yeah,
at least trying.
absolutely. Yeah, and trying, and that's what's so important is the trying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Alrighty, so Elliot, you go by Rhoadse as your performer name.
I
You're
do.
a singer, a songwriter. I'd say you even do like production and stuff, but like what else would you describe yourself as creatively?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, like, those are all the things. I've been recently getting into learning how to produce the thoughts that come into my brain
Perfect.
because for me, I have a lot that comes into my brain and I
Yeah.
like to use references, but I don't always know how to like physically put that into like a DAW or like verbalize. I would rather verbalize like, hey, like here's this song and I like this harmony, but I also like this synth section. How do we like mash that into like something new?
Yeah.
And so for me, the other thing that I really have been getting into is just like being an entertainer. Like I think that's like the
Yeah.
big thing for me. Like I did so much uh musical theater work. Like I did a lot of theater when I was younger and I did stuff on Broadway and off Broadway and just lots of theater. So entertaining has always been like a big thing for me. So I always like to
Yeah.
think I'm an entertainer. Because at the end of the day,
Entertainer.
that's what you go to a show for. You want to be entertained. You want to like see the show. So that's why like I love wearing my makeup. I love
Yeah.
wearing, like the costuming and like the clothing and like what you put out into the world is so important. So like for me, I like to call myself an entertainer. But she's a
Yeah.
singer. Definitely a singer.
Oh, totally. I need to just be like entertainer because, even somebody who's there making beats on a laptop is an entertainer.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I've seen like some of like my favorite shows have been people just like behind the laptop or behind like their desk like doing their thing and like it's baffling because they're not physically like performing or doing backflips or whatever, but like the sounds and emotions that they're creating via like the laptop or the DAW or the keyboard or whatever, is like it's moving, you
Uh-huh.
know? So, and that's entertaining in of itself. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of a, kind of this conversation is a pretty perfect pivot to what I had next planned. So talk to me a little bit about sort of your upbringing and like how much music was a part of your childhood and then maybe through towards your adolescence in your adulthood and like what made you know that you wanted to pursue music as a career.
absolutely. I mean, for me, like music was, I always call this my American Idol story. If I ever got onto American Idol, everyone has that story.
Yeah.
And I don't like to bring it up a lot because I never asked for pity. I never asked for sympathy. But when I was around 3 or 4, I definitely had some hearing issues. Like the
Mm.
tubes in my ears, I couldn't really hear. And so I wasn't like facilitating English properly. And
Oh.
so I had to go under multiple surgeries, having my tubes in and out. And it was really heartbreaking for my
Oh
parents
yeah.
because I mean they just like didn't like I would put in my headphones and I'd be listening to music,
Uh-huh.
but then I would take them out and it was still as if I had headphones on. They'd be like shouting and shouting for me. And
Right.
they eventually like took me to, like a hearing specialist and they were like, yeah, there's definitely a significant problem there. And so through a speech therapy and whatnot, for like 3 to 4 years, I mean, like up until I was like 7, I
Mm.
really had to work on it. But music is what got me through it. Cause I grew up with like, I loved the pop stars. I loved like Britney and
Yes.
Christina and
Yes.
NSYNC. And like,
Yes.
when I look at that, like that image was just so incredible because they're pop stars. They're not just pop musicians. They're not like
Mm-mm.
pop singers. They're pop stars.
They are
Like that whole branding.
entertainers.
Exactly. It's like that whole branding. It was just so eye catching to me. And I was like, that's all I wanted to do. Like my parents have videotapes of me like dancing around to like Genie in a Bottle and Slave for You and like It's Gonna Be Me, like these like big pop songs.
Yeah.
And that the music, like learning to sing and say the words that they're singing is what got me through that really tough time. And so I always attribute music to getting me through. I don't shut up now, as you can tell. Like, and as you know me, like I got a lot to say and a little bit of time. So I always remind myself that no matter how much people might say that I talk a lot or I'm a chatterbox or a motor mouth or whatever, this or that or the other, like it comes from a place of growth. And I
Yeah.
always attribute that to music. Music got me
Yeah.
through such a crazy time. So
Totally. And appreciation just of like what you have, I would imagine like that's I totally feel that. Like sort of similarly, I don't tend to talk about this a lot. I think I mentioned it on another episode of the podcast, but
yeah.
I'm a diabetic. I've been a
Oh
diabetic
yeah.
since I was 3.5. So like
Wow.
it really, having that stuff kind of happen and having it sort of just be like an idle part of your life, we tried to, and super commend my parents for forcing me to really be like, hey, don't let this be like an impedance on you. But it's kind of something that you can't escape. And it really like it
Yeah.
does form you in a lot of ways. And, I'm super happy with who I am as a person. And I think a lot of the aspects of my personality are because, I have had to rely on people for a large part of my life, because
Absolutely.
when I was little, I, was having to get, like actual, like insulin shots all the
Yeah,
time.
the
Now,
shots,
yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. And it's like the same with you. Like, it's, realizing that but in a way, you kind of relied on music as like an escape as well as, something that just brought you so much joy. So
Absolutely. And that's what it was. It was really the escape because,
yeah.
like, it's, and when I was in that musical world, whether it was, because I also listened to things like, I grew up with like Whitney Houston,
Hmm.
Dolly Parton, and Broadway, like those like big, like theatrical songs, like stuff from The Bodyguard or like
Yeah.
Rent. Like when I hear that, it's such an escape from whatever was happening in my life. So,
Yeah. That's
I love that.
awesome. Yeah, I didn't really know about your sort of musical theater past. So talk to me a tiny bit,
Yeah.
when did that sort of come about? Were you, doing plays in school, or was it something outside that you pursued? Like, talk to me a little bit about how that looked.
Absolutely. I did a lot of stuff. So school was kind of where I flourished musically. Like I was always the in the choir,
Yeah.
I was in band, I did theater, and then like around I would say like I did piano lessons. That was my big start. And
Yeah.
so I did piano lessons from like 5 all the way through to like middle school. But I
Mhm.
remember specifically in 5th grade, I everyone plays, the Mozart and the Beethoven and the whatnot. And you have the little books, and everyone sits there and they go to
Yeah.
the recital and everyone claps. But I remember in 5th grade, what was the big turning point was I wanted to perform my own song. I was like,
Oh,
listen, like, I was like, I love this stuff and I appreciate it, but I wanted to be on the stage performing my own stuff. My teacher was like, do it. Like, I would
nice.
rather you say that than like me be like, you need to learn Beethoven. So I performed my first song, and it was basically a ripoff of like Part of Your World from The Little Mermaid. Like, shout out to Alan Menken, because I mean his
Yeah.
stuff's incredible. But I mean, it was very empowering, and to be on the stage doing that totally segued into me doing theater. I started around like age 13,
Mhm.
like really doing community theater. I did stuff at school, the mini school plays and whatnot, but
Yeah.
I started doing community theater in middle school, and that's what like I started doing stuff outside of Pennsylvania, in Pennsylvania, and then eventually I signed up to be a part of this. I auditioned to be a part of this organization called Camp Broadway.
Mm.
It's a really fantastic organization. They've been around for like almost 30 years now,
Wow.
and they give opportunities to they give like the Broadway experience to less fortunate kids who might not have the
Oh,
opportunity.
wow.
And so they bring in the Broadway professionals. They do both like summer camps and like little like intensives. And normally started in New York, but they branched out all across the country. But
Nice.
I started doing camps there, and eventually I got asked to be a part of their Carnegie Hall series. And
Wow.
so I had an audition. It was like thousands of kids from across the country, and they picked 100. And this was in like, it might have been 12 or 13 was the first time. And I got in. And
That's
so I performed in
incredible.
Carnegie Hall, and I did it for 6 years. I performed 6 years in a row with the New York Pops.
Oh my god.
And it's just incredible experiences performing with people like Idina Menzel and Kristen
Whoa.
Chenoweth and like these big time legends. And it's just mind blowing. And
That's
so
crazy.
I'm always thankful for my theater past, because I think it really taught me a lot of what I wanted as a performer.
Yeah.
Like when I get on stage, like that's what you give to an audience member, or that's what you give to a listener. Like you have
Yeah.
to give them that experience, because at the end of the day, you leave your soul with that song and that
Mhm.
performance. So theater is always like, that's I always go back to it. I always think like that's what gives me my performance, if you will.
Yeah,
So
absolutely, and God, just, that's something that, I've personally like, I've never been the kind of person who could do theater. I think I did, like, a play in middle school or something, but I've never.
everyone does that like one play in
Yeah.
middle school. Yeah. Like somewhat required.
Yeah, exactly. I was the guy of Gisborne in Robin Hood.
Okay, that's a good
Yeah.
role. That's fun.
Yeah, I remember that. That was really funny. Shout out to Laurelhurst School for putting that on. But
Ayo,
no,
ayo.
just like the sheer amount of like I'll watch something like I'll watch, even just Hamilton like on Disney
Oh,
Plus or
absolutely.
whatever, like just the amount of just sheer like musical prowess that those people just exude with saying one fucking word. It's crazy. And just like
Yeah,
the kind of performer, and you could hear it in your voice as well, just like that, like the
you.
theatrical like backing in that aspect is something that like is really unmatched, I feel like, in a lot of other musical styles.
Thank you. That really means a lot.
Yeah.
And that's all, and that's what I want. I want it to be this experience for people, because like I said, like at the end of the day, like you put what you put out to the audience is what they get. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you might as well make it a good song and make it a good performance. So
Yeah, exactly. Totally. I feel you. Yeah, so you talked a little bit about and you were, cuz you're in Pennsylvania, so you were,
yeah.
I'm that's not too far of a drive, is it? Like from Reading to New York, how long is that?
It's like about like 3 to 4 hours, nothing
Oh,
crazy.
okay.
So
Yeah.
definitely doable.
Yeah, it's like with me, like I was born in Portland and I'm outside of Seattle right now and we've had
Yeah.
family that live up here. So yeah, it's pretty similar like drive distance from what I'm used to. But yeah, so you would do that kind of commuting, I guess. But
Yeah.
so was there a music scene in Reading at all when you were growing up? Like what was that like?
There actually was, and it was funny because it was something I never knew until I got older and started
Yeah.
gigging. Like around 13 is when I started really as well, like performing my own music and trying to get
Mhm.
out there. And I found out there's a big metal scene in
Ooh.
Reading, Pennsylvania. There's a one specific club that I believe is shut down now because of COVID, but it
Mm.
was called Reverb.
Mm.
And it was a really big place for DJs and for metal bands. There was always
Cool.
like a battle of the bands like every other weekend. And it was just music I never listened to. But it
Yeah.
was definitely like a rock and acoustic indie, like band, small town band sort of
Yeah.
feel, no matter where I gigged. And it was funny because that worked. Because originally, when I was writing music, I was definitely in that like Ed Sheeran, Shawn Mendes, early singer songwriter kind
Yeah.
of thing. So it worked.
Uh-huh.
Like I could go to places and sing covers and that kind of stuff. But I was writing my pop music on the side. And I always
Oh,
knew that no matter where I went, of course I could technically play it on guitar, but I would never be fully satisfied
yeah.
because I knew that, everyone wanted that Bob Dylan. Everybody wanted that Billy Joel. The amount of
Yeah.
times people have asked me to play Piano Man when I brought a piano to a gig.
Oh,
And I'm like
no.
14 years old and like I'm like listening to like, I don't know, like Ed Sheeran and
Right.
like Maroon 5 or whatever. And they're like, play Piano Man. I'm like, I
Yeah,
don't know
man.
that song. Like I don't like of course I know the song, but I'm like, I don't know it on piano and I'm not gonna.
Oh, God.
So and it that those kinds of comments always followed me no matter where I went because people were like, well, you do they people knew in my hometown that I did Broadway and that I did theater and I was a
Yeah.
musician and that kind of stuff. And they always wanted that. And I was like,
Yeah.
I tried to appease them a little bit, do some Bob Dylan, do some Fleetwood Mac, do some, things that kind of were things that I enjoyed because that's my other thing. I don't like singing music I don't enjoy.
Oh, God.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's exhausting. That's the only feeling I get. Like when people are like, "Oh, you have to play these like 45 songs," and like
Yeah.
if you don't like any of them, that is probably going to be the worst performance or just like the worst experience ever.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know?
The wedding band set, I can't.
Mm.
Yeah, I've played some wedding gigs and some of those kind of gigs where it's like, "Oh, cool, I'm playing Celebration by Kool and the Gang 50 times." Like
And like good on those people that can do it and like
Yeah.
sell it because I couldn't do it. I couldn't
Oh,
do it.
same. Yeah, so that's interesting. Reading, obviously Reading, Pennsylvania isn't the music city that I would think of, but that's cool. And I kind of feel like it's similar like to a lot of like smaller, maybe I don't really know what is Reading like a kind of like a suburb type of thing or what? Is there like a
It's like
fairly
a
big
small
city?
city. It's funny
Okay.
because a lot of people accredit. I'm trying to think of the other musician, but I know the one musician that everyone credits Reading to is Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is from Reading.
Oh, shit.
So
Okay.
that's like the whole everyone loves Taylor Swift in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
So and for good reason. I mean, goodness gracious, it's Taylor
Yeah.
Swift. Like we're not gonna come for the dynasty or the
No.
Swifties. I'm not on this podcast.
Don't worry,
But
Taylor Swift stands. You're safe here. Don't worry. We won't
you
we
are
won't
safe.
we won't try to behead your queen.
Liked
Don't worry.
Evermore, okay? I did like Evermore. Gosh, like
I still need to listen to it. I have not heard it yet.
it's pretty good. It's pretty
Okay.
good. It's fine.
Cool.
It does its job. If you want to be sad, go listen to Folklore. If you want a little bit of uplifting, go to Evermore.
Okay,
Like,
perfect. Sounds good.
but like Reading is, I don't know, it brings in a lot of people. Like we definitely have got I would say like it's a medium to large musician hub. Like some
Cool.
pretty medium to large musicians come through and have done things. Like I've seen like the Jonas Brothers.
Oh,
I've
wow.
seen like Shaka Khan. I've seen like Janet Jackson. There's been like some big people that have come to Reading.
Yeah.
And Taylor she originally used to always come to Reading, but now she goes to Philly.
Right.
So makes sense. But it's one of those things like the music that I always grew up around was that kind of thing. It was either like the rock or the indie or whatnot. But then my mom listened to a lot of like Whitney Houston
Mhm.
and Luther Vandross and like
Yeah.
that kind of like R&B. Like I grew up with TLC.
Nice.
Like I had TLC and Rent and like Nirvana in the same house. My dad loved like all the indie stuff, like the Pixies and
Oh, wow.
Shins and that kind of stuff. So
The Shins, hell yeah. Gotta bring it back to the PNW.
my dad, it's funny because when I studied abroad with Berkeley and I went to London, I had this like weird because I knew my dad studied abroad. He did, I think, 2 semesters abroad in London,
Oh,
like a
nice.
full year. And he was around the time with like London Calling and like that,
Oh,
like
yeah.
whole the punk scene. So it was very interesting to like be there and then like be like, this is what my dad went through, but like 20 years ago, doing like such an interesting time in music and
Yeah.
culture. And like my dad got a piercing apparently. It was so
Nice.
cool. He never talks about it, but every now and then it comes up in conversation because I have obviously.
Yeah.
And my dad's always like, yeah, I had a piercing, whatever. He's like, it was cool at the time. I was like, piercings are still cool, Dad.
Piercings are never not cool. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
But no, that's super cool. Like, I feel like that this will be obviously for a multitude of reasons, this will be a time that with my when I, hopefully when I have, some kids and some grandkids, love to tell them, be like, yeah, I was doing it back in, early 2020s.
Yeah.
It was a shit show, but we made it through it. That's
And I
what I'm
think that's what
excited.
everyone's looking forward to. We are
Mhm.
gonna have that up spike, like
Yeah.
when, in the wise words of Rhoadse, when this is all over, like when this is all over, I think it will be okay. And
Yeah.
like I think we'll all be better for it of learning, you
Yeah.
know.
It'll be the roaring 2020s instead of the roaring 1920s.
Girl, I'm excited.
Ooh, it's gonna be so
It's
good.
already started.
Exactly. Oh god. That's
Uh,
hilarious. But yeah, so talk to me about why you wanted to go to Berkeley. Like, talk to me about like your decision process with that, and then maybe sort of through to what was it like when you first got there? Did you have like a pretty easy time like right off the bat there? Did it take you a little bit to get used to it? Like, what was your experience pre and then sort of during, and then maybe a little bit post Berkeley too, if you wanna do
oh,
that.
absolutely. I mean, my time at Berkeley, first of all, a lot of people love to not credit Berkeley, this or that or the other, whatever they would like to say. But,
Right.
I credit Berkeley for helping me grow
Oh
in
yeah.
general. Like I did two, no, I did three summer intensives, 2 different years before I went to Berkeley because I really
Oh
liked it
yeah.
as a music school. My parents were always about like summer programming, like do something that's enriching to the things that you love. Like my
Yeah.
brother was a tennis player. My brother went to tennis camps.
Nice.
Or like for me, they wanted me to be in arts camps or theater camps or whatever. So we heard about Berkeley, and I found out that my music teacher at my school, shout out to Lancaster Country Day School,
Yeah, yeah.
um, my teacher was an alumnus.
Hmm.
And he once he knew that I was like really taking music seriously, he kind of like took me under his wing and was like, this is my alma mater. If you're really looking to get into modern music, because he knew I was writing my own stuff and I was
Yeah.
performing at school and whatnot. And he was like, this might be a place that you want to check out. And so I did
Nice.
one summer camp and I was only there for like a week, but I felt incredible.
Yeah.
It was like everything I had dreamed of. I was like, I'm at music school. Like this is what Glee is like. This is like what
Yeah.
all these shows are about. Like the drama and intrigue, of course, because it's
Yeah.
summer camp and people are crazy. But like it was like I finally felt seen. More than theater, more than any other camp I had been to, I was like, I'm doing it. Like it's just music. Like there's no other courses, there's no math course, there's no science course, there's no like we have to take a break and go do something else. Like music 24/7.
Yeah.
And I know that was always a big struggle for people when they first got there.
Mhm.
Because I mean, I get it. Like when music is always the back burner
Yeah.
for so many of us in high school, and then it becomes the only focus for 8 to 12 hours a day for
Yeah.
5 days a week, it'll crack you. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like so many of my favorite musicians and songwriters and people that I had met at Berkeley in that first 2 semesters, when they left, it was earth shattering to me. Or when
Right.
people left in the first semester, I was like, they're so talented. How could they not want to do it? But it
Yeah.
only took me until like my second semester to realize that like I get why.
Totally.
I get why people get burned out.
Yeah, fatigue is a thing, like, especially at a place that, not like there's and that I'll preface this by saying, Berkeley is there's a lot of different scenes there, there's lots of different, like, types of people and everything, but, there's I was and I think both of us were lucky enough to, surround ourselves with people who were, not necessarily toxic or anything, but, there is a bit of a reputation sometimes with Berkeley, having that kind of toxicity around it. So
Yeah.
and I totally understand like people being, not only like super tired of, music and having to, do that for the entirety of all of your time there, like filling up your entire schedule, but also the fact that, it can be cutthroat, I
Oh,
totally
absolutely.
understand it.
It was definitely for me, Berkeley, once I got into Berkeley, at first I didn't even think I wanted to do Berkeley. It's funny because over here I have a school I can't show, but there's a and an and an and
Yep.
but that's what I was looking at in Southern California,
Yep.
because everyone was tooting and rooting for that school of music,
Right.
and there was some pretty big people
Mhm.
coming out of that program. I mean, the
Yeah.
people that were writing with the Chainsmokers or producing for such and such. And
Right.
so, I mean, I did the audition thing, and it's funny because someone one of the questions you wrote to me about our lovely friend Elise Legendre,
Yeah.
we both apparently had auditions and were there the same weekend around the exact same time, but did not see each other.
Whoa. That's
And so
crazy.
we talk about that all the time about like, how are we in the exact same place? Because they only took, I think it was like less than 100 or something like that.
Yeah.
And to get that audition, honestly, I don't know if you were going to keep this in or not. That was one of the worst auditions of my life.
I'll
Like
keep it in.
one of the worst auditions of my life. I mean, I'm not talking about any person because I don't know any of those people, but I mean, like eating lunch during my audition, soup and salads,
Oh,
and just crunching and slurping while
oh
I'm pouring
no.
out my heart to, I sang, what did I sing? Something got a hold on me, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it must be love. I sang that, and they were just slurping through. And then I sang,
Bastards.
what was it? When We Were Young,
Yeah.
by Adele, and I was like pouring out my heart, and they were like, "Yeah, we just like didn't really feel the emotion with that, so like,
Uh,
maybe try to like really bring that in with your face." But then, flip side of all that, first of all, didn't get in, obviously. Had the worst audition of my life and didn't get in. But the head of the department was a Berkeley honorary doctorate recipient,
oh
um,
yeah.
and so that specific recipient came and talked to us freshman year, Patrice Rushen.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Patrice was fantastic. And it was
Mhm.
funny because the entire time she was getting interviewed, we made eye contact like maybe 8 times,
Mhm.
in a room of hundreds of kids.
Yeah, I
And
was
she
there.
came
I
over to
remember that interview. Yeah.
and she came over to me afterwards and she said, "You were at the audition." I was like, I was, hi, Miss Russian. And it was one of those things where she was like, "You are in the right place."
Nice.
And because she saw that like within the first week I was already making friends. I was friends with Elise, and I
Yeah.
had this like I had so many different people, that it was like you start making the friends in the first week, and she's like, "You seem comfortable and you seem happy, and this is where you should be."
Yeah.
And that was just so reaffirming because
Totally.
at that time I still, Mr. Confident over here, not feel that confident in the
Oh
first
yeah.
year, because I mean, you look at this, the competition and the talent and, the skill, and you're just
Mhm.
like, it's mind blowing.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, no, I totally feel that. Yeah, that was a great lecture. Also, I really hope everybody does know who Patrice Rushen is, but if you don't, like, educate yourself, please. That's the most hostile
Please.
I think I've ever been
Oh
on the
my God.
podcast. But
She's just
like,
such an icon that is like completely like not in people's minds.
oh
And
my
it's just
god.
baffling.
Not only did she put out like one of the fucking dopest like electro funk albums in the 80s, like she's like a
Bangers.
absolutely phenomenal jazz pianist. She put out a lot of really cool shit throughout the late 60s to early 70s. So fucking go educate yourself, folks, if you are
Absolutely. And
not.
she did a lot of film scoring as well, if I'm
Yeah.
correct. She did stuff for like television shows and like
Yeah.
award ceremonies, and like she's just her mind.
Yeah,
Her
she's
mind.
incredible. Yeah, she's
Shout
the
out to Patrice
best.
Rushen.
Shout out to Patrice Rushen. If you're listening, Patrice.
Patrice, please.
Yeah, exactly. Oh god.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love hearing that, like, and hearing sort of the dichotomy between you going to or I won't say what it is.
But yeah.
I won't I'll bleep that out. I'll put a little I'll put
Yeah.
a little sign tone in there or something. But yeah, you going to that school that shall not be named that I think I also applied. I didn't audition, but I did fill out an application for. But yeah, and then seeing the dichotomy between the sort of social environments between the two of the places, like yeah, that's yeah, it's pretty major. And sort of off of that, just for our audience, would you mind telling them the impetus for our meeting, like how we kind of cross paths a little bit?
We happen to work in a little office called the booking department.
Yes, we did.
And I came in because our other fantastic friend, Elise Legendre, was like,
Mhm.
"You should just like work in the booking office." Like, I
Yeah.
was like, okay, like that sounds good. And it pays like basically minimum wage. But so we started working in the booking office together. You were one of the first people where at first I was like, okay, I know Elise, but some of these people are a little nerdy. And I don't like using that word because we go to music school. But I met Adam and I was like, Adam's cool. I like
Yeah.
Adam. And I
Hell
could
yeah.
tell from the minute that I walked in there that I was the loudest human being that might have worked there. And I needed to,
man.
just like take a step back and be like, this is a place for quiet people.
It's a place for people that like to listen to headphones. Yeah.
Or like do
exactly.
work, like actually do something. And I'm used to just like, like let's get stuff done. This is fun. Like,
Yeah.
but it did teach me a lot about like, like that's what taught me to learn about Berklee students, if anything.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this is going to sound weird. I'm going to try to phrase this as best as I can. I
Sure.
feel like a lot of people knew who I was just in like seeing me down the streets or whatever. Because I mean, I every day was a fashion show for me. Life was too
Yeah.
short.
Oh yeah.
And so, like in that sense, I feel like a lot of people saw me but didn't like know me.
Yeah.
And so through those little interactions with students who like, someone comes in for the exact same like studio, the exact same time, the exact same days, like you start to get to
Mhm.
know people in a way that
Oh
isn't
yeah.
just like, oh, I've seen that person like 900 times.
Yeah,
So
exactly. No, and I was gonna say that's 100% how I feel about you. Like I think that maybe had a couple mutual friends with you, but like I knew who you were. I didn't like, I didn't know who you were, but I was like, oh yeah, that's Elliot. I was pretty sure I even knew your name before I had like talked to you or anything, or like before you worked, but I was like, I feel like his name is Elliot. I'm pretty sure I know that. Just because of the fucking looks you were serving all the time.
and here's what it comes down to. This is going to get, I guess, a little deep, and I've been thinking about this because this was something that you talked about in the questions, and just
Yeah.
about how we've been talking. A lot of that was I did know that about a lot of people, that when people would look at me, I could tell, or like I just sometimes felt that people saw me and knew me,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, sometimes I didn't know who I was. And that's
Mm.
kind of what Berkeley was for me and what Boston was for me, was
Yeah.
really this 4-year long journey of figuring out who and what I am, what I
Mhm.
want to be, and what I can become.
Yeah.
So a lot of that came through, the fashion. A lot of that came through trying out makeup. I mean, if you told Elliot pre Berkeley that he would be, on a Zoom call
Yeah.
on an awesome podcast with a lovely human being with like full makeup on, I think he'd be mortified. But I'm proud of the person that I've become today. And I
Yeah.
think Berkeley and people like you who have, taken me under their wing in friendship and camaraderie, it
Yeah.
really helped me grow into the person who I am today. So
Absolutely. I feel the same, like, about y'all, everybody, from the booking office, all my friends at Berkeley and everything. It shows, like, how complex of it shows, like, the sort of, like, the possibility that everybody has of being just, like, extraordinarily well-rounded and just, like, diverse people, like, having
yeah,
interests, not it's funny, like, you'd think that going to a music school, it would kind of hone you in on certain things a little bit, and you would be like, "Oh, music, music, music all the time." But if anything, I think for me, it's forced me to, look at music and the like passion and love that I have for it, but also like take that and look at everything else in my life through like a similar scope. And like, that goes from everything for, personal relationships, that goes to fucking politics, it goes to like whatever,
absolutely.
so yeah, again, like I'm really fortunate to have had people like you there and to have had all of our other friends and everything. But yeah, it just shows like the amount of yeah. I'm kind of beating a dead horse on this, but like
No, but yeah, it's that growth. And I think,
yeah, growth.
booking office taught me a lot of that because I met so many people from different majors and backgrounds and even places. Like we had international people in the booking office
Yeah.
who I had never met before, and we just
Hmm.
became like the bestest of friends.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I love that. So we sort of talked about some of our mutual friends and stuff, and a couple of influences that you've had through your life musically. But so who would you say, like, on top of who we already said, really shaped the way that you like create music and or listen to music? Like sort of as you were going, were there any like big pivotal moments, like musical moments you kind of remember being like, oh shit, I can sound like that, like who are like some of those types of people that come to your mind when you think about that?
Absolutely. I mean, when I first started writing, uh, Ed Sheeran of all people. I mean, Ed Sheeran's
Mhm.
been on a journey and a half, but
Yeah.
when Ed Sheeran first came over to the States, I'll never forget it. I was like 12 years old and I begged my mom to like let me go to Philly to see the show because it was at this band shell. It was like on the ocean, like right
Ooh.
by the water. And it was just this really small open air venue that was only open to like 200 people. Because I mean, he
Wow.
was a nobody. He like ATM just come out, and I just loved the writing style, and I just like poured
Mhm.
over all of his music. And so when I first started writing like my acoustic music and the stuff that I love, I mean, that intimate performance of just like really well crafted songwriting, it was like that
Yeah.
second coming of Bob Dylan that everybody was
Yeah.
like, that's what it's going to be. And then as I started like really getting into pop music and like all the stuff that I love, I mean, I look at producers like Max Martin, I
Yeah.
look at, Ilya and
Mhm.
Savan Koteka, who does like all the writing, producing for Ariana Grande and like these
Yeah.
big, big artists. I mean, I look at those people and they've stamped history. They
They
have
have.
stamped like what the sound has been for the last 20 to 30 years. And
Yeah.
I just find that so incredible that a producer like that can find the pop people and find that, the people that are at the top and still somehow influence how pop music sounds, even though they've been
Yeah.
in the game for 25 years. Like,
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
it's
Yeah,
just
no,
really crazy. Yeah.
yeah, it's super crazy, and like the fact that I honestly the Ariana Grande's collaborators, I didn't know who they were. I feel silly about that, but yeah, it kind of goes to show like you would just think of people who are so able to sort of get that sort of incredible like just pristine, expensive quality sounding like songwriting, production, whatever, but still not have as much name recognition. They're so important and they again, like you said, they
Yeah.
have stamped what they've stamped history. They've stamped what music will be, definitely. They've stamped what it has been. Like it's just crazy to think about like, and we're looking at it as people, like looking
Yeah.
at like a single person. I think about that. I think about that with like Quincy Jones. I think about that with
Quincy,
I don't know,
absolutely.
Brian Eno. I think about that with people like those guys. Like it's just if you look, you'll look back and you'll be like, wow, it's crazy that a person has, made this colossal advancement of like an art form, it's pretty incredible.
Absolutely. And then the last person for me about like how I make music now, I mean
Mhm.
the people that come to mind are like Charlie and AG Cook. I mean,
Yeah. Yes.
all the hyper pop people listen. I
Yes.
mean, I
PC
look at,
music.
oh my god, PC music and specifically people like AG and
Mhm.
Sophie and Charlie. I mean, those people are the people that are taking what the future could be and putting it in the present. And it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, I look at what Charlie released this year with How I'm Feeling Now. It's just like,
Uh-huh.
when you want to talk about like music doesn't need to be this big production thing. It doesn't have to be with 90 people in one room. It doesn't have to be millions and millions of dollars. It just needs to be a feeling. Like
Yeah.
that album will speak for a decade. That album will
Mhm.
speak for time and time on because it's about pure raw emotion and pure raw
Yeah.
sound. I mean, the sounds that they captured in that, I mean, I
Yeah.
wish. And so like with the
Exactly.
writing of like being in quarantine, like I look at that and every day I'm like, oh, I could probably just sit back. I'm like, Charlie released an album by not sitting on her ass and just like
Yeah.
putting her emotions out. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
So
No, I
it's
totally feel that.
the motivator, man.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah, the quick we gotta shout out the whole PC scene, the whole PC music scene. Charlie, you got, Hannah Diamond, you got Danielle Harl, you got yeah, everybody. Like
They're all so
and
good.
they are. And sort of, sort of adjacently with PC music, you've got, again, like people like Sophie and then but also like folks I know we shared a concert experience of the person who I'm gonna talk about is FKA Twigs.
Uh,
Like, yeah, that was it
next
was
level.
incredible. Next level. Her stuff is incredible. Oh god, Arca, the new Arca album that came out last
Arca.
year, her stuff is fucking crazy. Like, oh my god, that was like one of the most that again, like I did a kind of year-end like album of the year favorites like episode, or like a little segment in the middle of the episode, and I talked about like Kick One and how it like envisions and lays out the world that I would want to live in. Like it's non-binary, it's multilingual, it's like incredible. It's just like so diverse of like an auditory experience. Like, yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's something that, and again, like that's something that is so cool about the work that Sophie's doing as well. Like, and just the incredible place that like these trans women are carving for themselves in this music is so good. And I'm so happy like that it's like again it that it kind of or sort of intersects with a lot of like my favorite music as well. You know,
Absolutely.
I'm so happy that we're living in this time,
And
for
then
music at least.
that's what the goal is. I mean, we want these people that have been pushed into the corner, that have been pushed
Yeah.
into the background to be this center of attention, this center of
Mhm.
focus. And so when I look at someone like Rosalia jumping on
Yeah.
KOK, I mean, like
Yeah.
that crossover of just Spanish electronic influence of these two
Mhm.
incredible women, it's just like mind
Yeah.
blowing. Or you look at people like Sophie working with like Kim Petras or with
Yeah.
Madonna, and like
Mhm.
these people, they're finally slowly working their way to the forefront. I don't think we'll ever. I always hope that we get to the point where the gender and the sexuality and all that stuff doesn't really matter at the end of the day, and it's just the music. But I know
Yeah.
there's always going to be this binary that people
Mhm.
fight against for the mainstream, and I
Yeah.
think that's what, as long with my music, like I think that's what we all fight for, as
Yeah.
independent queer artists. Like, we fight to put our name out there and have our voice heard. And I always have to remind myself, no matter how much we fight for our voice, as for our sexuality to be visible, for our identity to be visible, at the end of the day, the music also has to be, about the identity and the visibility. And it shouldn't
Yeah.
matter what all that is at the end of the day. It should just be
Exactly.
the music.
Yeah, claiming it's that thing of, like, claiming that space and how important it is to, like, have a space and, and again, like, be seen. Like, I won't beat that to that. I'm obviously have a totally different life experience, so I would not be able to do that justice at all, but yeah, like, so much props to what you just said. Like, that's incredible. Yeah. So, yeah, kind of moving on a little bit. So we'll talk more specifically after the break about your music, but in general, like what are your like songwriting processes like? Like, do you try to, do you write on a specific instrument? Like, does it come, in this like kind of a uniform, similar way all the time, or is it kind of just whatever happens with writing?
It's always different. And I
Yeah.
know that's such a cliche answer, but it's like, I think for me, it really depends on, first of all, what I've been taking in. I always try to reflect when I'm going into the session and think about me, like, what have I been listening to? What have I been hearing from people? Not even just music, like the words people are saying, like the way
Yeah.
people are, the connotation behind certain words, like uh, the TV shows I've been watching. Because there's no,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, there's always so much you can gain
Yeah.
from anything. So I mean, like, recently I've been going back to reading like classic books. Like, I recently just bought Jane Eyre again.
Oh, nice.
So shout out Jane Eyre.
Yes.
But there's just something about like those classic novels that, like, I could even go back to that. And like, I try to pull from everything that I have. And normally I do voice first. It's all in the head.
Oh, cool.
And so I try to, come up with a melody, and normally it's words. I'm just like, as you know, through this interview, I'm always just talking and saying dumb shit. So I'm just like, this and this and this and this. And then sometimes it'll fall into a cadence. I'm like,
Right.
wait a minute. That could be a song. So you whip
Yeah.
out the phone, you put it in, or sometimes it'll be like that melody in the beat. And I try to do that Charlie Puth beatboxing thing that I can't do, where it's like boom, boom, like doing like the vocal note and the beat, and I can't do
Yeah.
it. It sounds like
Oh,
shit. But
shit.
then like I go back and I try to put it all together. I'm like, okay, that could work.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it is just like it all rushes at once. Like, that's happened
Mhm.
with a few of my songs. Like, I think about songs like Tragic or Credit Card. It just came.
Yeah.
It was there, and I poured it down in 15 to 20 minutes, and that was it.
Totally.
And I think
That's awesome.
that's when you know that it's I think that's when you know it's good.
Yeah, like, trusting your and that's, that's something that I don't think I've talked about on here yet, but that's, a big golden rule is, like, trust your first instinct. Trust your initial gut reaction to stuff because 9 times out of 10, you will, like, be trying to, go back and capture that, magic that you had first heard, but you're not. Like, that most times, that first, like, little spark of an idea is gonna be so good that it's gonna be worth just running with?
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. On that note, we are gonna take a short break, but coming up, we will, dive into your music a little bit more specifically. But first, I am gonna throw to a meditation minute. Howdy, and welcome to the 11th edition now of Meditation Minute. I got a quick one for you today. It was from the same field recording trip that I kind of went on with my new interface and everything, or I guess recorder, not interface. Yeah, it was at Blakely Harbor, that same awesome environment on Bainbridge Island, here where I live. And yeah, it was recorded with my Wildtronics mono stereo parabolic microphone. And it's really great. I think I might have talked about it on here before, but it has a like blendable stereo microphone as well as a mono microphone. So you get like three inputs for, in one fairly small package. So yeah, this is a pretty nice one. There's some nice little bird chirps and stuff. So yeah, just take a listen, let it wash over you, and enjoy. All right, and we're back. So kind of before we get specifically into your music, my friend Elliot, where do you find yourself the most inspired? Like, do you find that it's a physical place, or is it more of like a state of mind, or is it both? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
I definitely think it's a combo. I think your environment can really shift and shape the feelings that you have. So, for example, if I'm in a shopping mall, or if I'm in like a store and I'm shopping for something, I'm gonna have a different feeling than if I'm sitting at home, like outside. So I
Mhm.
try to remind myself that I can write anywhere, but sometimes certain things will trigger certain things.
Yeah.
So like for me, like I've written some of my favorite songs like sitting down with my headphones in a coffee shop, like isolated.
Oh, nice.
And it feels like I'm isolated, but it's not, because like there's obviously people around me and there's people and things happening, but I feel as though nothing's like messing with my brain. And that's
Yeah.
when I feel pretty inspired, because I can see people, I can see things happening. I love looking at people. I am definitely a people watcher. And there's it's not a weird way, but in like a way
No.
of like I like to figure out people's stories, or like what they're going through. Like what's the tea?
Yeah. That's
So
cool. I've never heard of any of people like working well, like doing songwriting in coffee shops. I think you're the first person like that I've heard that like does good work in a coffee shop, like songwriting. That's hilarious.
it can happen. I mean, pavement on Boylston Street, baby. Like
Oh yeah.
there's definitely been some times where I've written some assignments hours before and then run to the studio and
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. I love that.
yeah.
So yeah, let's hop into it. So both songs we're going to talk about today were released in 2020, and both are in my opinion like really excellent, just like really succinct pop bangers, and they're both under 3 minutes.
Thank
So like
you.
I'm just kind of curious. So for you as a writer, you have like I'm sure much more insight into this, but how important to you is the length of a song? And like I again like I'm not a songwriter or anything, but I imagine that it can help kind of like retain the audience's like interest or whatever, or their like attention. But are there any other specific things that go into like conceptualizing how long a song will be for you?
Absolutely. I think we have grown as a society to a place where obviously we all know that like our attention spans are so short.
Mhm.
And for me, the very poppy stuff under 3 minutes slaps. It is the
Yeah.
perfect amount of time. If you can get it in, but like make it big, make it this just
Yeah.
like fun explosion. Like you said, like it's such a compliment, but like concise, like just 3 minutes, under 3 minutes. And I think that's where a lot of the pop stuff goes. But I definitely have like some personal catalog songs that are definitely like 5 minutes,
Mhm.
of just like me like going through, the motions, the verses. I think it honestly depends on the feeling. And so I definitely have some of like my poppier stuff that's like longer, but I think there's something about a short, concise pop song that like it's timeless.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's that kind of thing where they can just, play it. It's so like it's such radio friendly, like good shit for
Yes,
broadcasts, It's like,
absolutely.
this we can sneak it in wherever it needs to be snuck in and, just get people going. I love that like as a like creative strategy almost in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So, let's talk about endorphins for a minute. So yeah, so again, we worked with some dear friends of the show of on this track. So Elise Lejeune, who we already talked about in this episode,
Hmm.
and Joe Bagala, who I have interviewed in the past. Right? Yeah, he
Yeah.
produced the song. Yeah,
Yes, he did.
yeah. So kind of talk to me through like sort of meeting. I would love to hear like your story meeting both of them and then sort of how your like creative relationship kind of came to fruition and then sort of I'm also curious because I haven't done a ton of this, during the pandemic, but what is writing like during the pandemic? Like,
Ooh, that's a fantastic question. First of all, those two are, oh my gosh. So Elise was one of the first people I met when I arrived at Berklee College of Music.
Mhm.
We started meeting people during orientations, and like we caught our vibes and we liked each other. And there was like a group of 30 of us that like we always saw each other at like like the beginning like sit down parts of
Yeah.
like the beginning. And there was a time when she was in the dorms and she was like, "Hey, a bunch of these people are going to this room and we're all going to go drink. Do you want to come hang out?" I was like, "Okay." And I met her and another one of my soon to be like lifetime friends, Anne Staple Callett.
Yeah.
And shout out to Anne. We love Anne. Look up Anne Kathleen. Fantastic indie
Shout
rock
out
pop
Anne.
music. Oh my gosh. Um, and we've been inseparable since. And it was funny, our friendship was always just a friendship. Obviously, we had some classes together. We always would listen to each other's writing, but we never really like worked together
Mhm.
until probably like I would say like late 2018. I
Yeah.
studied abroad and I came back and I started really making music I liked. And Elise was like, "I really want to help you. Like, can we like write songs like legit together?" And she's always just been like a go-to person.
Yeah.
And
That's
she like
awesome.
really she gets me. And that's my big thing is that they don't always have to be there, but having that one or two like writers or producers or people, that just like get you and are there to help you, like that's important, I think, for any musician.
Yeah, it's that comfort. Like you can't like again, it's that kind of thing and I feel like it goes back to like sort of the inspiration and stuff is you can't like there's a lot of times where, I've tried to force myself to get work done and like somewhere that, like I'll be on vacation or whatever, I'll try to like set up a little temporary office kind of thing with my laptop and
Hmm.
I just can't get any good work done. Like there's a certain like flow state that you get into like just in a room like, me in here. Like I just there's something I tap into it and I'm just able to get, good work done. So there's nothing like it in a way.
Absolutely. And then
Yeah.
with Joe, I mean, it was funny. Joe and I knew each other at our like beginnings of Berklee. We always saw each other. We always said, "Hey," we had some mutual friends and whatnot.
Mhm.
But it was only until our last semester together, we were put into senior seminar with
Mm.
Aaron Barra, as he mentioned in his
Yeah.
episode. And we just started like realizing that our music tastes lined up and we liked the same kind of music and the same kind of styles and we wanted to make similar music. And Aaron was like, "Why don't you two just like make music together?" We were like, "We've been at school together for like almost 4 years. How have we not made music?" And
Yeah.
it all started with Tragic. Tragic was the first song I brought to him. And
Cool.
it was funny because when it first started out, it was so like wannabe Tyler the Creator, like See You Again. I had like the
Mhm.
really cheesy strings and the piano and the hand claps and all that stuff. And Joe was like, "That's cute, but let me." He's like, "You like Charli, right?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "And you like A.G. Cook and like PC Music, right?" I was like, "Yeah."
Nice.
And within less than 24 hours, he sent me back a demo that was like the most mind blowing take on my song. And I was
Perfect.
just like, that's it. Like I
Mhm.
inseparable. We've been inseparable since. I trust that man with like my heart, with my mind, with my career. Like he gets it, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, we can come back to endorphins for a little bit, but since you brought it up, Tragic was the other song I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
I guess there's one thing specifically that I really love is there's the kind of disconnect between like the lyrics and the harmony and melody. Like I love that, and I still, and I'm not trying to say that Morrissey is a good person because he's a shithead, but
Yeah.
that was what I loved a lot about the Smiths was like the
Yeah.
disconnect between the harmony and the lyrics. So was that like kind of intentional on your part, or like did it kind of just end up, happening the way it happened?
It did kind of just end up that way. It was funny because
Okay.
that was one of those songs where, again, you talk about songwriting and the first gut instinct. I
Yeah.
I can say this on this podcast because I think it's funny, and my partner would find it funny. But I came back from a Tinder date of all things,
Hmm.
and it went from hanging out, like watching Netflix, to we spent all night just like talking, just like
Yeah.
physically talking about like our lives. They were so interesting, and I got back, and I sat down at the piano, and Tragic poured out of me, and it
Nice.
was just like done. And I remember it was like 3 a.m. I heard the birds chirping. I still have the voice memo, and I can hear the birds like chirping softly behind me, trying to be quiet, not waking up my roommate at like 3 a.m.
Oh,
singing
cool.
Tragic. And it's just one of those things where, like, once we started making the production, it just sounded different.
Yeah.
Have these like really like dramatic lines about like this could go up in flames, and I don't care if the stars don't align, like like,
Right.
but it worked with the music, and I was like, huh. And so I liked that it was a different take on pop music that's normally like either like really dramatic, really tragic, or really happy,
Yeah.
really poppy. Like you can
Yeah.
pop the world.
Yeah, that middle point. Yeah, it's a Venn diagram, that's kinda how I've envisioned it, it's
Yeah.
there's always gonna be that middle ground for stuff, and I love that the fact that with Tragic that you struck that middle ground, you're in that, where the you guys know what a fucking Venn diagram is. I
I
don't
got the
know.
circles on the circles on the
Yeah,
circles.
exactly. But yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And so, getting back to, I guess both of them, we talked a little bit about like the story behind Tragic. I love that. So what was kind of the story behind Endorphins a little bit? Like, where did your inspiration come from? And then, like, what kind of emotions did you find yourself like wanting to evoke specifically with that song?
Absolutely. I mean, for everyone, I think 2020 was really rough, but I definitely felt it once I moved home, because once everything happened in March, shout out to my parents for being smart. They were like, "I love you, but you just got to get out of Boston.
Yeah.
I can't leave you stranded in the middle of a international pandemic in
Yeah.
Boston." And so I came home, and it was rough. The first few months were definitely rough because you
Yeah.
get forced back into this. It's like a routine because my whole family was together, and we were happy, and we are happy that we're all together right now. But
Mhm.
it's still a routine that I hadn't felt in a really long time. Of like, I'm the son. I do these things. I do this cycle, and you go through the small town and you do the same errands. You do the
Yeah.
same actions every day, and it just felt like I felt lethargic. I felt like I was
Yeah.
doing both just in physical, but also career wise. I felt like, I was right on this cusp of like really doing music, and then it was just nothing.
Yeah.
And it was nothing I could fix online. I started trying to do, stuff online, like with connecting with artists and, reaching out to people. And no matter what I did, although those were great things, and I've made so many fantastic connections through this situation, it
Mhm.
still was really tough on me. And all I wanted was release. I wanted that rush of what endorphins
Yeah.
are, and I know a lot of people know what the word endorphins are, but
Mhm.
like the physical feeling, a lot of people don't always realize like that's what endorphins are. And that
Yeah.
could be, that feeling of excitement of doing something that you love, or it could be, like seeing someone you haven't seen in a long time, that smile and that rush that you feel when you see someone that you love, or
Yeah.
doing your favorite activity, like going on a run or even being physical in any way, shape, or form, those endorphins. That's all I wanted.
Yeah.
So I was listening to, a lot of that Charli project, and just the sounds of, the electronic, but also the organic,
Mhm.
and just mixing that together and finding a way to express how I felt. Uh, it just felt like I was trapped. And that's kind of
Yeah.
what I wanted to evoke throughout the sound, was these, like, this clanging metal, this pop, like, I say endorphins like 900 times, but that's
No.
all I want. I want endorphins, and that repetitiveness is kind of what I was feeling a lot, and that's what I was telling myself. And I held
Yeah.
on to that song for so long. That was like one of the first songs I wrote in the pandemic. And
Mhm.
I was just fine tuning it and fine tuning it and fine tuning it myself. And then I eventually came to Elise, and I said,
Yeah.
have the song. It's a little different, but I think you might be able to help me. And she heard it and she said, you need to put this out. She's like, there's nothing for me to do. I'll fix a word, but
Yeah.
you need to go send this to Joe, and you need to get this out, because this is
Yeah.
you and this is the best I've heard you ever.
Mhm.
So, and that meant a lot. And that's how I knew something was special there with it. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, the fact that, look, like turning again, like with the organic versus like process kind of thing, like those are like for me, there's no better like endorphin rush than listening to a fucking really cool synth pad just because I'm a nerd. But like that was like it's like the exact kind of thing. Like, it reminds you, it makes you want to live, even though you're like you're listening to it on headphones or whatever, or speakers that are
absolutely.
reproduce for, electronics. But hey, man, that's all human made. That like somebody sat there and made it. Like, I love that. Like, it does it. Like, it shows you, like, it gives you that rush. And I just absolutely love that like sort of thing behind that. That's so cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, moving on a little bit. Like what do you think for you, like what have and this can be pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, during the pandemic, whatever. Like what have been some like struggles that you've had in your musical career? Like, and when what do you kind of feel like some hurdles that you've had to jump over are?
And you sent me this question, and I knew it was coming, and I'm still not
Okay.
prepared, because God, it's a lovely, a deep, deep question. And what it comes
Mhm.
down to is self identity and self assurance.
Yeah.
I mean, that's always been my biggest struggle, is that, like we talked about earlier, like, although people saw me and knew me, I didn't always know who I was.
Yeah.
And that shows in my music. Like, my first EP is, it's eclectically all over the place. And I love
Mhm.
that for what it is, but even I listen back to it, and some of it I hear is the Rhoadse I am today, but it still feels so distant from what I'm doing now. And it's
Yeah.
interesting that, 4 to 5 years later from my start of, like, really releasing the music I like, um, I'm still growing, and I'm still
Yeah.
changing. And that's always been my struggle, it's that change.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, just that like, and that kind of for me, like looking back on your past stuff, like with the knowledge that you have and being like, can I go change it? Should I go change it? Like, it's always kind of a struggle, like, and even like with, and that can apply to creative stuff, that can apply to like just life stuff in general, like sort of thinking about like what is better left in the past or what like is worth going back and editing a bit. I guess editing is kind of a weird when you're talking about like personal
No,
stuff,
but
but
that's
like,
how it is these days. Like, I think with in the age that we live in, with social media and the how the internet shapes what you put out onto the internet, you can edit reality for
yeah,
people. The image that you put out to people, you could delete your Instagram and restart. You could be a
yep.
whole new person if you want to. You could have a side Instagram. You can have 20 side Instagrams.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, like, the big thing I think that has been my struggle is, just like learning that it is okay to grow. It is
Hmm.
okay to not know. And it is okay to continue to want to grow. And those are my
Yeah.
three big things. So,
Totally. I love that. Those are everybody needs to write those down because those are things that you really need to live by if you're going to be creative or if not. Like, it's so important to be reflective of that kind of stuff with yourself. So, yeah, I love that.
absolutely. And for me,
Yeah.
one of the final things is, like, again, finding out my sound as a gay man,
Yeah.
and coming to terms with how sexuality and my music combines. It doesn't always have to be so about, I am a gay man, but at the end of the day, it does, like
Yeah.
that was a big struggle for me when I first started writing music. Was like, well, writing these songs, but I don't always feel I don't feel like I'm telling the whole story. I feel
Right.
like I'm only showing half of the side. I feel like I'm showing a very commercial side of me, not a very raw or honest side of me. I realized that
Mhm.
was actually just detrimental. And so,
Yeah.
like you talked about, like if you could go back in time, like I wish in those first 2 years of Berkeley, I wish I was just writing the gayest songs and the dumbest songs. And because towards the end of my time is when I started really doing that. And I'm glad I had that safe environment to do it. But it
Mhm.
is one of those things where you have to think like, was it too little, too late? But at the end of the day, I don't have any regrets. I'm always growing. And, like that is what life is worth living for. It's always growing.
Absolutely. I love that. So one last thing before we end it. So this has all been pretty, good advisory stuff, but
Yeah.
like what are two or three things that you'd, have advice for people, maybe wanting to get into songwriting, getting into, singing, getting into playing an instrument, just be like living life. Like what are some of your like tips? What would you say?
Absolutely. My big thing, I always say this to people. This is my senior quote, but I've been saying this quote for a while. I don't know who came up with it, but it's if your dreams do not scare you, they are not big enough. And that is
Mm,
the God honest truth at the end of the day. If you do not feel like your life rides on your career, on your passions and whatnot, like figure it out. And
yeah.
that's a little harsh, but you know what I mean? Like that drive is what I think people look for. And it is okay to not know. It is okay to
Yeah.
try 900 different things because at the end of the day, there's no one thing that defines you. So
Mhm.
I always say, if you like a certain type of music, like that certain type of music and find out who your favorite people are, who are
Yeah.
those favorite people, who helped those people make that music, who helped those people make the publishing, who helped, like do the lineage because at the end of the day, you might find someone that you might know and you might meet that person one day at, Joe Schmo coffee shop and they're
Mhm.
like just happen to be there picking up their, iced Americano.
Yeah.
Go up and say hi to them, maybe interact with them, and also don't be afraid to reach out to someone, whether they're bigger or
Mhm.
smaller than you. That was a big thing for me this year
Yeah.
on social media, like really getting onto social media and just like, don't be afraid because they have like multi thousands of followers more than you, or,
Mhm.
you think that they're so cool, like you can never talk to them. You'd be surprised how many people just want to talk to someone. Like,
Yeah. It's a small world, I hate to
it
be
is.
cliche, but it is.
It
Yeah.
truly is. And like, I think the smaller you realize it is, the less stressed you'll be about things. Because
Yeah.
all people want to do is connect with each other. They want to work with each other. And that if that person doesn't want to work at that time, it's that time. Never
Mhm.
feel afraid to go back and ask, maybe it might be a better time, or just know when to just ask. I think that's
Yeah,
the big thing. It's just like know in your heart when it's the right time.
definitely. I can't think of a better way to end the podcast,
Yeah.
Elliot. That was perfect. Thanks so much for being the guest this week. It's
Thank
so
you
so
so
great
much
to
for
talk to you.
everything.
Of course. I'm happy that, we said that this was like one of your first interviews. So hopefully this is one that you can, look back on and have a good start to your, interview cycles.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we go, where can our audience find you? Do you have any you want to do any quick social media plugs?
Absolutely. I am on all things internet at Rhoadse World. So that's RHOADSEWORLD. And I'm
Mhm.
on www.rhoadse.com. All my music's on Apple Music, Spotify, all that good stuff. I do have a single coming out soon.
Yeah.
No confirmed date yet, but we're thinking around Valentine's Day, hence the hearts.
Ooh.
But
Yes.
we're pumping out music in 2021.
Perfect.
There's no other way to do it. Just put out music, have fun, live life.
Exactly, folks.
I
Be
sound
on
like
be
a
on the
TJ
lookout.
Maxx card. Live, laugh,
That's
love.
that's perfect. That's hilarious. Yeah. Well, yeah, folks, go listen to Rhoadse. You put out 4 singles last year. They're all bangers. Go listen to all of them. They're incredible. And yeah, just we'll link all your music and stuff in the description. So yeah. Such a pleasure.
Adam, thank you for everything, truly.
Yes. Of course. So, folks, this has been Early Reflections. I'm Adam Daniel Jones. Find us on Facebook at Early Reflections with Adam Daniel Jones. We're on Instagram at Early Reflections Pod, all lowercase. And remember, early reflections have an important role in determining the sound and character of a space. See you soon.